welcome to the Horror Track here at ConTinual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and tonight we are talking about things that go bump in the night, fictional ghost hunters and ghosts. But before we get into that wonderful topic, I'm going to let my terrific panelists introduce themselves, starting with Rhonda.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Jackson Joseph, and I write as RJ Joseph, and I'm really excited to be here.
Well, we are happy to have all of you, so thank you so much for being here. Misty.
Hi, I'm Misty Massey. I am an author and an editor. I copy edit for Falstaff Books, and I'm an acquisitions editor for Lore Seekers Press. And when I'm not writing or editing, or occasionally baking cookies, I am also the sun-drenched cleric Malibu on the Authors and Dragons sister podcast, Calamity Janes.
Sounds good. Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Ravenel, and I write the Restless Spirits series. I'm probably a baby author around here, but that's me.
David.
I'm David R. Slayton. I'm the author of the Adam Binders Urban Fantasy series from Blackstone Publishing.
And Tamsin.
I'm Tamsin Silver, and I'm an author with Falstaff Books. I write both urban fantasy and historical fantasy. Things I think we'll be touching base on this evening for me would include the Untold Legends series and, of course, Mark of the Necromancer.
Okay. And Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Christian. I write romance and horror for Falstaff Books and a variety of other book publishing houses. And I think I'm probably here because I write the Dr. Watson Monster Hunter series, Shadow Council Archives, for this is an offshoot of the Quincy Harker books with Falstaff Books.
And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, all of which have all kinds of ghosts and spirits and monster hunters and ghost hunters and all kinds of things that go bump in the night, which brings us back to our title. What do we love so much?
Ginny.
Ginny.
Oh, I missed Ginny. I'm sorry, Ginny.
Hi, I am the forgotten Ginny Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Daw Books. I write under 7 pen names in every genre and every length. And as J.C. Koch, I write horror, and as Gemma Chase, I write somewhat creepy paranormal. And that's why I'm here.
You know what happened? David blinked in and out, and it changed where your box was. And in my mind, that box on the Brady Bunch grid had already spoken. So my apologies.
Oh, that's me. I had to scratch my nose. I'm sorry, Ginny.
Oh, you mean we're supposed to turn our video off for that? Okay.
I never do.
Good to know. Lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
So let's come back to that. What do we love about ghost stories? Rhonda?
Oh man, I know what I like about ghost stories is that they seem so relatable because they actually give us an explanation for things that we might otherwise not have an explanation for. So when we hear these voices, we see these shadows, things that happen to us, we can attribute them to ghosts, and then there's also those of us who may actually be tapped into that paranormal realm. So it kind of gives us another place to play and to try to understand.
Awesome. Tamsin?
Of course, you went with me next. I was thinking, which one do I want to pick? One of the things I like about ghost stories, one of the things I like to write when I'm doing like Mark of the Necromancer, there's a couple of them, and I like the idea of getting to know that spirit's story and giving them maybe some closure. And I think that comes from my past experiences and whatnot with different spirits in my life. And so that's one of the things I like. But about reading them, I just like the adventure of it and the possibilities it opens up for your imagination.
Okay. Alexandra?
Well, let's see. I am a person who has a very uneasy relationship with death. as I think most people probably do. I think that's probably why ghost stories are are so prevalent in our culture, and basically, and every culture around the world, is because dying is something all of us do, and dying is something that we're all unsure about. And we would like to think that there is something beyond this. We all want to think that there's something, that we can go on in one way or another, and that we don't just kind of wink out. I mean, at least I hope there aren't a whole lot of people who think we just wink out, because I always think that's kind of a depressing thought. So I think ghost stories give us the opportunity, to kind of explore that and get comfortable with it, to get comfortable with our own mortality. And then, of course, there's also, I don't think I'd have ever met anybody who has not had some sort of paranormal experience, whether it was with ghosts or, somebody who had some sort of strange intuition or whatever. I think it's something that everybody can relate to because everybody's had some kind of experience.
Okay. Amy?
I think for me, it's the mystery, so something weird happens. So you kind of want to figure it out. You want to see if it's really a ghost or if it's not really a ghost. And I think it's the whole mystery surrounding it, trying to figure out who it might have been.
Misty?
At me? Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I like to be scared. I like that squiggle down my back. I mean, it's very simple. I just like to be unnerved every now and then in a way that I know is safe, because in the real world, being scared means that you're probably in actual danger. You might be about to have a car wreck. You might have somebody chasing you, and those are not fun. But this way I can get that little frisson down my back that I can actually walk away from and be perfectly safe. So
you used one of those words that I can spell, but I have rarely heard it said out loud. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Gini?
Pretty much what everybody else has already said. So, ditto, but I like doing it. I forgot. I also write funny paranormal as myself. And I definitely fall under the I believe category because I've had too many experiences to quit to pretend that I don't. And I just think it's really interesting. It just gives you another fun aspect to write. You can write them as helpful. You can write them as just like people when they were people, but now they get to carry on. So I just really and pretty much everybody covered it already, but I think it's fun to get to write them. So.
Okay. How about you, David?
I think it's because they're universal. I mean, I like that they're creepy. I like that there might be something else beyond life, a lot of what was said, but I can't think of a culture that doesn't have ghost stories, that doesn't have something about the beyond or an afterlife. It's pretty interesting that that's universal. And, I love like the Japanese, I always mispronounce it, yokai, like their ghosts are very funny and they feed on fear. So they like to scare you in silly ways but it's interesting how every culture seems to have ghost stories.
Mm-hmm. Now, what were the first ghost stories you remember reading that got you hooked on ghost stories? Misty?
The first,
or early ones, what stuck in your mind?
Honestly, the earliest scary stories that I remember reading were Poe. And I know Poe is not generally the kind of thing you expect a 7 or 8 year old to be reading, but my parents had my parents are people of a certain age, and they had a bookshelf in the living room with this set of classics they were well bound and they were each in a sleeve and they were really pretty on the spines, and so they sat on the bookshelf because they were pretty, and my parents didn't really read them. And so I did. And one of them was Tales of Mystery and Imagination. And I read that thing cover to cover. Of course, being like 8 or 9 years old or however I was, I didn't really understand everything that I read, but I read it anyway because I knew that there was something that was speaking to that woo bone that I had inside me, and so I loved it. You know, I just Poe is got to be my earliest.
Okay. Rhonda, how about you?
Yeah, I was a big Poe fan from an early age. So yeah, I was thinking, oh my gosh, is it weird for little kids to read Poe? Because I was reading it. But also, I had a lot of family exposure to ghost stories. So I come from a family where there were some outliers who were willing to talk about their paranormal experiences. And so, you know, I grew up like going out to seek out those, you know, family members who would talk to me about, you know, the times that they saw ghosts or heard ghosts or, you know, things like that. And so, you know, I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist, so it was a thing that the majority of the family was kind of shaking their heads like, no, 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 no. But I mean, even in church, we talked about the Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit. So, you know, I was kind of surrounded by them as a kid.
Yeah, I my first thing that I remember is picking up a book of regional ghost stories when we were on vacation in the Adirondacks, and it was all the regional tellings of things that I found out later are very common elsewhere: the Woman in White, the Phantom Hitchhiker, all those classic ghost stories. And I read that book until the cover fell off. I was hooked. And then there was a book I got from the Scholastic Book Fair called Jane Emily, and there's this haunted garden ball, and yeah, and I love that book, and I read it till the cover fell off. So, and at that point I was hooked. So how about you, Tamsin?
I think that if I remember correctly, I think because I also, like Rhonda, was raised in the church. And so we didn't talk about paranormal. That was satanic, and that was not something. And yet the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost, right? Okay,
right, exactly.
Right. Truth, whatever. And so, but I think that one of the first stories that gripped me was the Headless Horseman.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember. I'm sure we read it in school, or we saw like a movie, like the teacher wanted us to shut up for an hour, so they put on like the cartoon of it or whatever. But I always think that was the first introduction I had to that kind of exhilaration of, oh my God, what the hell. And so other than that, I really don't think I got into reading stories that had scary things in it until I was probably in junior high. And that would have been like starting to read things like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, and then R.L. Stine and stuff like that. That would have been where I ended up.
Okay, Amy?
Well, I'm going to admit I am a big chicken. so I've never really been a fan of horror or anything like that. You can ask Lex about my experience after seeing Signs. Anyway, but for me, I remember,
frightened. I would say you were very frightened, and we thought it was hilarious that you were so frightened.
I know, right? Anyway, but my point being, but I remember ghost stories, of course, the ghost stories from North Carolina, that set of books. But I think I really kind of got interested when I started watching Ghost Hunters on the Sci-Fi Channel. I love that ridiculous show. The original though, not the one not like Ghost Adventures or any of those others. No, the original Ghost Hunters, definitely.
Okay, Jenny?
Well, if we're not counting fairy tales, and I'm kind of not, even though they're very horrific, a lot of them, and I read the originals, you know, not and we're not counting Scooby-Doo, which I also was.
We should totally count.
Again, I would be one.
I forgot about
The Man in a Mask. I was huge into mysteries. That's my first love, and I would read through everything in the library. And I'm 12, and I still remember. I've had a lot of concussions, but I still remember this. I'm at the library front desk of the main library in my town, and I am carrying it up. I am expressing my displeasure that the next Nero Wolfe book is not out. As the librarian says, it just came out last week. I've read it already. I've read every mystery we have. And I don't know whether it was kindness or she was really hoping to get rid of me. But she said, "You're done with mysteries. Come over here." And she took me to the horror section. And I read through all of it. I am also a scaredy cat, but I didn't realize how much until Stephen King's Night Shift stopped me dead from reading this. I still have nightmares from things like that, but I read until I got to that, and I got to that really late because I wasn't necessarily going alphabetically. I read everything in horror and I loved it. And I loved the ghost stories, and I loved the creepiness, and I loved the evocative writing and how you were in a different thing, and each story could be a little different. And there were more ways to creep you out than there were ways to solve mysteries. And that, I think, is why I loved horror and still love it today, even though I still love mysteries too. So
Cool.
Scooby-Doo is the perfect combo, but
This is David.
So I am also a huge scaredy cat and was raised very religious in the woods, but we had ghost stories in the woods. We had a lady in white. We had prowlers that I would see looking in the house at night. So those rural ghost stories always kind of infused my life. But I don't know when I started reading horror because I was always so scared of it. And then I never watched any movies. And finally I went to see The Others with Nicole Kidman. Some friends took me and like, "Is it going to be too scary?" I'm like, no, you're not going to be scary. And there's that moment when the armoire opens and I threw my popcorn. I went, "Ah!" And the people behind me were splashed with popcorn because that's how scared I was. That's how much of a scaredy cat I am. So now though, I definitely started getting into King. I'd seen the movie The Shining. So I started inching into horror, inching into stuff. And then when I listened to the book, The Shining, on audio. And I was like, okay, I get the compelling tone of horror and ghost stories and how they can work.
Okay. Alexandra.
Probably my very first experience with ghost stories is I have two older sisters, and my sister Lucy in particular had been trained by my aunt, whose favorite thing was to scare people, to scare little kids. She thought it was hilarious. And so she told me this story called The Golden Arm, and I don't know if anybody has ever heard this story before. But it is a ghost story about this. It's very much the same formula as Telltale Heart. Guy marries beautiful woman. She dies. She was in an accident. He had this golden arm made for her. Very shortly afterwards, she dies. Well, he's greedy and he goes and he steals the arm out of the coffin, and then her ghost comes back to get it. She scared me with that story, but I loved it so much that she then scared my entire third grade class with it when they all came over to the house for a Halloween party. And so that was probably my very first ghost story love, was that story. And I told it to second graders every single year. And I would have kids, when I taught second grade, they would hear that story and be traumatized and then come back years later on Halloween Day for me to tell that story to them again. It was very strange. But then after that, I was kind of hooked on horror. I read this young adult book that a kind librarian gave me because I wanted to read Stephen King, but my mother didn't think I was ready for it, and so she wouldn't let me go over to the adult section of the library to check out Stephen King. Even though my aunt had taken myself and my cousin to see Pet Sematary, my mother was still not having it. So she introduced me to this book called Wait Till Helen Comes, and it's about this girl whose family moves into an old church and they're turning it into a house, and there's of course a cemetery out beside it. One of them her little sister begins seeing this ghost in the cemetery, and it's a very good paranormal mystery for little kids, and it scared the crap out of me. But of course I read that and then I jumped straight into reading Stephen King. So don't think that you're weird about the Poe thing, because I mean I was like 7 reading Stephen King.
Yeah.
My mother was very worried about me.
Explains a lot.
So how have you put your own spin or twist or stamp on the ghost stories as you tell them, or the ghost hunters? Amy?
Oh, I got to go first. Oh God. Okay. The way I approach it, the way my series works, is it's not horror. It's very much urban fantasy. It has some very light moments. My spin on it is that there's ghost hunting, that there's ghosts, and there's a lot of kissing. Nobody's kissing the ghosts, of course, but ghost hunters are kissing each other, you know. So my spin is very romance and found family and working together to solve the mystery. And a lot of times, you know, the ghost might be the bad guy, the ghost might not.
Okay, Misty?
I don't what I'm working on right now is a series of novellas for Lore Seekers Press, and it's kind of a ghost story with a noir bent, because when I was a teenager there was a TV show called Colchuck the Night Stalker, which
Yes.
most of you are probably familiar with.
Oh, yes.
It was one of the first creepy shows that I remember being on television for regular viewing, because up to that point there'd been doctor shows and policeman shows and love shows, and there were never a whole lot of creepy shows. And that one hit when I was in middle or high school, and I absolutely loved it. And so even though it didn't last very long, it's always had a place in my heart. And so I'm writing this series for Lore Seekers that features, it's kind of a modernization of the Kolchak story, because I wanted to insert that noir feeling as well into the ghost hunting. And so instead of a reporter, I've got somebody who writes for an entertainment website, and she has to go around around Hollywood, essentially, investigating all these things that come up, because they're part of the website that she has to look into, and then things turn out to be much more strange than she originally thought. But it was because of that noir, that romantic noir feel, that darkness of that human ordinary darkness, but I mix it with supernatural darkness so that it's kind of Kolchucky and calls back to that love. So
Rhonda?
Well, one thing that I really like to do is infuse my stories about ghosts with some of my own reverence for like the Black experience. And so, you know, there's a lot of things that we do here in my family that I've created on my own since I've been an adult, you know, where we revere the ancestors. We do believe that they're still around for guidance. So I've written a story about that was published in Cemetery Gates' Campfire Macabre. So a flash fiction story about a ghost lady who is able to see ghosts of the enslaved, and she's able to free them from bondage. Of course, she experiences a spirit that does not want to be free, which also reflects kind of, you know, well, Black current experience. Like, I meet a lot of Black people who don't understand that they're in bondage. They don't want to be free. And so I've also written a short story that will be included in my upcoming short story collection. About a woman who, she and her two dogs, she's a root woman, and her two dogs are actually African god and goddess who help to eliminate evil spirits. And so they have to do this to their neighbor's home, even though their neighbor is like a raging racist. It's still their job to help protect her and her family. But then sometimes I like to take the ghost into Gothic settings because I'm in love and enamored with the Gothic.
Yes.
And so I've written a story before also where a ghost is actually telling her own story. Of course, the people she's telling the story to, they don't know that she's dead. It's not until one of those people follows up, kind of trying to find this lady, that she finds that she was actually dead when she told them that story, because she encounters her ghost again. So I like to kind of infuse those ghostly elements in with, you know, the Black experience to kind of reflect what I understand and have experienced.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, there are three big influences on the type of story I tell. And that's Scooby-Doo, the ensemble cast, Supernatural, the buddy flick, and the character of Van Helsing, the angry outsider. And that's, pick one of those, some, you know, mix it up. add some differences, and those tend to be the kinds of stories that I tell. What I love doing with ghosts is looking for why they're still around and trying to understand their motivation. They're not just shrieky, horrible things. They're trying to do something. They might be messed up about it, but they're trying to do something, or they have a reason for being there. And I also love to draw from history, from real accounts of hauntings, from paranormal investigations, and from the different cultures that have settled in an area, and what are their folk tales about ghosts and their stories from where they came from that are going to color the types of ghosts they're going to see. And so to me, that mixes it up, so it's not just, oh, it's another guy in a sheet, or as we know from Scooby-Doo, a shady real estate developer. Ginny.
I like to do a lot of different things. I like to make them funny. I like to make them scary. But one of the things that at The Sixth Sense, 20-year-old spoiler coming, how the ghosts are interacting with the kid. Sorry, spoiler, Bruce is dead. I thought was great. And I really liked that because that Bruce doesn't know he's dead. That literally none of these ghosts seem to know they're dead, and they're coming to this child who has this ability for help. They may not even realize they're coming to help, but because he can see them, they're gravitating to him, and he has to help them move on. And I like that aspect. I don't know that I've ever done it. Honestly, in my writing, I've done some of it, but I think that it just gives you so much to explore that you can do whatever you want. That's what I love writing about it, because it's never going to have to be the same old thing. The ghosts are as individual as people. Their desires and their needs are as individual as anybody else's desires and needs. And it just gives you this really cool aspect of in genre that you can do, or in literary. I mean, The Lovely Bones is partially a ghost story. And so I really just like doing it. I was trying, while everybody else is talking, I'm trying to single out something. It's like I got nothing but M. Night, great job, really influenced, right? So that's all I've got, but I really do love writing about them.
Okay, Amy.
So me again?
You again?
Me again?
Wait,
You started with me.
No, Misty started this round. So
No,
yeah,
Amy
No, I started it.
No, Amy
She's
did.
talking about romance.
Tamsin,
Amy started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was left.
Lex,
Yeah.
Lex. Wait,
Oh,
Tamsin,
I thought it was
who's on
Tamsin.
first?
Who hasn't gone this round? I haven't gone this
Who hasn't
round. Who
gone-
hasn't gone this round?
Tamsin,
Raise your
Lex,
hand.
and David.
Tamsin, Lex, David. Yeah, you guys, I have more people than usual. I'm getting lost here.
You got a lot of people, Gail. Don't worry.
I do.
It's
Go
fine.
I
ahead.
don't
be
feel so
honest-
alone, though. I don't feel so alone. She's forgetting everybody.
That's right. Right.
To be honest, I lost track of the question.
How do you put it? How do you put your own spin on the ghosts and ghost hunting? That I remember.
Okay. So Mark of the Necromancer, with that, she is the only one that can see them because she is a necromancer, and she didn't know that until she died. That's a story. So she's a trust fund baby and annoying and hated, and she dies on page 1, as she should. And she wakes up the next morning in a hotel with some guy playing solitaire next to her, and she's very confused. And so the story is about her, kind of her redemption from who she was. But as she's doing that, the way that happens is that I use it. I think that's that Scooby-Doo aspect in me, as well as I like the team and I like solving a mystery. So the ghosts are around for her to figure out what's going on. So her friends are getting killed and she's showing up where they died, and their spirit can talk to her and tell her and show her things. And so it's about her trying to solve that mystery and helping them cross over. So I believe Gini was saying that, she hasn't written it where they're there to help, but that's exactly what I do. Is I like the idea that that I can help with that transition, that I help them find closure and move on, which we'll see in the third book as well in the Untold Legends series, when someone dies and their spirit has that opportunity. So it's definitely something I like to deal with, but I do like the whole group. I like that. And I also obviously like the buddy system, because I've got Brewer and Billy and the other series that deal with spirits as well.
Cool. Alexandra.
Well, I think probably the thing that I like the best is kind of the opposite. I love writing stories where the ghost may need to be helped to move on, but in so doing, they're helping the person that is involved as well, the living person as well. The novella series that I'm working on right now is about a girl who is a creepy girl. She ended up living with her uncle, who owned a funeral parlor, and he dies, and she ends up inheriting the funeral parlor. And she realizes, as she's becoming a mortician, that she can see dead people. And so she decides that what she needs to do is to be helping these people move on, but really they're kind of helping her get her life together. But each story in the series is going to have, there's a different love interest story, because they're romances. There's a different love story focus, but in the process of that, there is also a ghost that's connected to the couple that is kind of helping them along. And they're funny. I love the idea of ghosts being funny. Too often, I think it's kind of a used up trope that the ghosts are these wailing, horrible spirits, or angry because they can't move on, or because there's something that they weren't able to do in life. And there is a little element of that sadness, because they're obviously still there because they need help for some reason, but they're also really funny too. And that's kind of how I make it my own, is I like making them funny. I like making them wise. I also incidentally like coming up with really weird names for the books, because all the books in that series have funny, like, death puns. The first one is called Grave New World. The next one's going to be called A Hearse of a Different Color. And yes, there is a party hearse involved in the story. So I really like the idea of funny ghosts, and apparently funny morticians as well. I think I was supposed to be a mortician in this life, and I just wasn't good at math.
How about you, David?
So I kind of, a little bit like Lex, I work off of, like, White Trash Warlock. There's a spirit that is, so I like a little bit of humor, if the title doesn't tell you that. But at the same time, I kind of took a different direction. The ghosts and spirits that threaten in White Trash Warlock or Trailer Park Trickster, they are things that don't want to die, that died. So there's definitely a malice or an anger behind them. They're usually larger and threatening. The first one in White Trash Warlock ends up being quite primeval and being ancient, and way too much for poor little Adam to handle. So he has to call in some help that he does not want to. But I think of the first 3 books as the death arc. So White Trash Warlock, Trailer Park Trickster, Deadbeat Druid. Death herself is really the main catalyst for that arc, because she's trying to get things off the board or resolve things that will restore the natural balance. So the ghosts or spirits that Adam deal with really do need to pass on. He's not so much of a ghost hunter. I do put a few more of the traditional kind of spirits in book 2 a bit, and we will definitely get to play with them a lot more in book 3. But really, it's a matter of things that break the natural balance, that need to be moving on into death, so that the cycle of life and death can maintain. And that's kind of how I twisted things around.
Okay. Well, folks, believe it or not, we have blown through our time. So on this next lightning round, I want everybody to please tell what your new book is that has a ghost or a ghost hunter in it, or recent or upcoming, and where people can find you online. Starting with you, Gini.
You can find me at my website, www.ginnykoch.com. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Pinterest. It looks like I'm on Instagram, but I'm never there. And I'm desperately trying to think, what is the thing I didn't, does a ghost ship count? If a ghost ship counts, my and that is it is a ghost story. Saving Sally Ruth is in the Derelict anthology from Zombie Needs Brains that just came out in July.
What ghost ship would a ghost ship ship if a ghost ship could ship ships? There you go.
That's right.
Well done.
Rhonda, how about you?
Well, I can usually be found on Twitter, kind of not writing, at R Jackson, right? At R Jackson Joseph. And I do have a story in this upcoming charity anthology, Diabolica Americana, which releases in about a week or so. And my story, Regrets Never Die, is about a woman who is literally haunted by her past.
Very nice. Misty?
Well, the novella that I mentioned is actually going to be a set of 4, and it's going to be coming out from Lore Seekers sometime next year in an omnibus. So I'm not going to really announce a title or a date on that yet because I don't have them. But if you want to keep up with me and find out when that's coming and when other things that I write are coming out, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. I probably shouldn't be like Rhonda, but and you can also go to my website, which is mistymassey.com.
Nice. Amy?
You can find my books, Restless Spirit series. The first 2 are out right now. It's White Spirit and Cursed Spirit. And the third one comes out on December 2nd, all from Falstaff Books. You can find me at my website, amyravenel.com. And I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest.
Okay, David.
So you can find me at davidrslayton.com. Just don't forget the R. There's a lot of David Slaytons in the world. My latest book is the second in the series. It's Trailer Park Trickster, the follow-up to White Trash Warlock. And I am pretty much everywhere on social media. So if you just Google me, you'll find me easy. But Twitter is generally the best place if you want a quick interaction. So.
Okay. Alexandra.
My most recent book is called Dr. Watson, the Ladies Club Coven, and it is about Dr. Watson getting involved with the Coven of Witches, and his sidekick is the ghost of Sherlock Holmes. And so that one is out, and hopefully the third one will be coming out soon. I just have to finish it. But you can find me on all forms of social media. Probably I'm the most active on Facebook. I know that makes me sound so old, and it really does. And my website is alexandrakristen.com, but it is under construction right now, so you'll probably get a big black screen if you go there. But you can find me everywhere else.
Tamsin. You're muted.
You're muted.
The dog was barking, so that's why I'd hit mute. You can find me at tamsinsilver.com and Facebook, because I'm also old. And you can I don't have anything coming out new except for it's hard to even see this. This is the new that is kind of part of the cover of the third book in the Untold Legends series. It'll be out this winter. But if you want something both funny and ghost story-y, it's Mark of the Necromancer, and you can find that through my website or anywhere that sells books, mostly Amazon, Barnes & Noble. So.
And I'm pretty easy to find online at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. All the social media is some variation of those names. The most recent book is Legacy, and that came out under my Gail name, and that has a ship captain and a privateer who made a deal with their souls to become eternal guardians and stop a malicious sea elemental. And things don't work out quite the way they planned. But mostly you can find me here on ConTinual. So thanks to all of you for being wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more horror coming up on ConTinual, so we'll see you online.